Hello and welcome to the 12th episode of the Extreme Sports Performance podcast. My name is Ryan Blake, I'm the founder and CEO of Extreme Sports Performance. In this episode I'm going to be speaking to Phil Scott. Phil is the S&C coach for the England men's cricket team. I'm going to be asking him the questions I ask all my guests: who he is, what does he do, where has he come from and what has he done along the way, what are the key moments from his career so far, what are his top areas of interest, what are the most valuable things he's learnt? Who are his top influencers? What are his top resources for information? What are his top sports performance exercises and or drills? What are his top pieces of advice in life, exercise and or sport? And where can people find him? We freestyle a little bit in between questions and towards the end as normal. Really enjoyed recording this one, especially for the second time, which you'll find out more about as you listen. Here we go. Hi Phil, thanks for joining us on the Extreme Sports Performance podcast for the second time. For those listeners, we had a bit of a technical issue, or I had a technical issue last time, so Phil's very kindly come back on. So just to get us started off, could you just tell everyone who you are and what you do, mate?
Thanks for having me back on again. My name's Phil Scott and I work with the England men's cricket team as the strength and conditioning coach. I've been there for just over 4 years now with them, and so fundamentally we look after the 17 centrally contracted England players. We obviously have some county players that come in and out with our team, but our main responsibility and accountability with those centrally contracted players, red and white ball. Red ball, when I say red ball, I'll probably refer to it as red ball. Red ball is your test match cricket, your long 5-day format, and your white ball is your 1-day game and your T20 game, which is your 20 over game. So yeah, we travel, we play throughout the year. Summer in England, and then winter there's always a tour to at least 2 countries. So we can spend up to 250 days on the road in hotels playing. So the guys have a lot of cricket, and we're pretty busy all year round.
Fantastic. So how did you get to where you are then? Where did you start out in your professional career, and what was the kind of pathway or the route to your current role?
The route, so I did a sports science degree, not honestly knowing too much of exactly what I wanted to do. And then I was very lucky. I went to Swansea University and had Liam Kilduff as a professor there within sports science, who I spoke to a lot and gave me a bit of direction. Having left my degree at Swansea, there was a friend of mine, a family friend of mine actually, Matt Church, who worked at Surrey a few years prior to you. I asked if I could go along. I was personal training at the time and said I'm interested to see what happens within the sports world as opposed to the personal training world. And he brought me along for a winter along with Dan Pratt to intern with him and work the academy, and started guiding me through S&C. And from that moment I was like, right, this is definitely it. I'm keen to do that. So signed myself up to a master's at Middlesex under Anthony Turner. Did that for a year. I started getting a bit of experience and working with random people, still personal training at this point. And then I badgered Liam Kilduff for quite a while until he gave me a master's. It was a research master's back at Swansea. So I was very fortunate to have Liam put up with me for a year and work with him. My master's there was neuromuscular and biochemical responses to international rugby sevens. So an amazing kind of amount of information coming out of him and set me up nicely there. And then I think when I was very lucky in South Wales, there was obviously accredited S&Cs down in that area, but it seemed to be that all the accredited S&Cs were with professional teams and in work and pretty busy. Yeah. And I think I was one of the few coaches down there that was accredited but wasn't working professional teams. I was working at the university. I was working with the Glamorgan Academy under Rob Arman and some Welsh tennis with Rob Myers. So work seemed to come my way because everyone else was busy pretty much at that time in 2010. So I got a lot of luck, I guess, in terms of things coming my way, and then in the early days and a lot of experience, and then made my way towards Lancashire County Cricket Club, where I started in 2012, and then I've been with England since 2014.
Fantastic. So, did you find that the transition from county cricket to international cricket was a big change, or were there some similarities or big differences?
Yeah, I think that, being honest, there probably was. It's still cricket, it's still cricketers, but the environment that you're dealing with, you're constant. I think, like I mentioned already, that you're constantly on the road. So having those focus blocks of training, you don't necessarily get them like you do in county cricket. So in county cricket, you'll have 6 months of playing, you'll have 6 months of off season, of which 4.5, at least will be winter training. So that's a good chunk, and I can't imagine too many other sports get 4.5 months, 5 months straight before their season starts. Football has a 6-week window, and athletics has certain competitions throughout the year, and going from a good chunk in the winter to being constantly on the road and always in competition mode, getting momentum and traction and trying to get the guys moving quickly forward. We have moved forward, but I think the amount you move forward how quickly you move forward is a lot slower in international, kind of whether you like it or not, because you're constantly on the road and they're constantly playing. And even teams can change, and you have a red ball and white ball team, and suddenly the test team are back with their counties or having off time. So getting used to that and finding the system and building relationships with players took a bit longer than it does when you're with your county team 24/7 early doors in the winter.
Sure. So what would you say, Phil, the 3 key moments from your kind of career in sports science, strength and conditioning have been so far to date?
I guess the 3 key moments, I've combined lucky moments as well as learning moments. So first one was an opportunity, as I've already mentioned, with Matt Church at Surrey. Just the opportunity. I think I made it happen, and I was fortunate that I was probably one of the only people, along with Dan Pratt, who asked Matt Church that year to come along and work with him. Whereas now I imagine county guys and professional sports teams have people emails every day saying, can you come to work with them? So an early opportunity when the sports science world wasn't so busy and saturated, I'm really grateful for. It's getting more and more competitive, and I was lucky that I had that opportunity without too much competition early doors. That's the first one. And then this is just an umbrella statement, but failed interviews. I think you learn so much from them, and those moments where if you miss the mark, then you start to learn why and your mistakes, and those moments when you're competing and people are better than you and you get feedback from the interviewers. There's been some big learners there for me, and that's I've had we've all had numerous failed interviews. That's just what happens, but
yeah.
I think they're quite big moments to learn from.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, I guess within it, working for England, we had a coach change situation. So one coach was taken out. We had our new coach, Trevor Bayliss, brought in, and I think kind of understanding that or realizing how quickly and how to adapt to the new system as such. I'd always been in quite stable situations, and it was a big learner for me that it's okay to adapt, and finding ways to adapt and having patience within that was a real moment. Because in reality, if a new coach comes in, in any sport, if he doesn't like you, or you don't fit in, or you can't adapt to how the system's going to be, you could get asked to move on. But I take quite a lot of learnings and pride, I guess, from having the ability, or in that situation at least, to have adapted to a big change of of coach at the top. So they're probably, looking back, three moments as such that were pretty significant within my journey.
What would you say your top three areas of interest are now in strength and conditioning, sports science, and I suppose your all-encompassing kind of umbrella area that enables you to do your job more effectively?
I think, for the people that know me, and also from a sports science point of view, and within the role that I'm doing at the moment, we travel so much. So sleep has been a big area, and jet lag that I'm interested in, but also we can apply well. So when every winter we're covering different time zones. So being able to provide information to the guys about how to combat that best. I think the key statement that we always provide when we give our jet lag strategy is that you're still going to be tired. It's just this is the way that this process will be the way to make you least tired. It's not about we're not curing jet lag. We can't defeat it unless you walk to where you're going to go to. But I think that's one area that I've been really keen on. Outside of the literature and the journals, a bit of a softer book that's come out recently is Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. And to supplement the whole sleep and jet lag thing, it's an unbelievable book that makes all the science very simple and applies to top end performance, but also your day to day gym goer and person who is conscientious about their health. That's been a book that's really kind of made my jaw hit the floor. I thought that I knew a lot about sleep, but the effects of it are just phenomenal. So I'd highly recommend reading that book, and it opens your mind to a whole world of what's possible as such. So yeah, sleep's been a big one for me in the last few years. Specifically S&C wise, well, I'm fascinated about just the whole concept of moving, and the thing that I keep coming back to is sprinting, and sprinting well. We've obviously learnt a lot over the recent years from the track coaches and the track side of thing, and applying that to your sport and how it fits in is that's what I mean. We keep coming back to it. So if you start to run well, move well, accelerate well, decelerate well, I think there's so much transfer to every sport, and even on the micro level of if you start to run well and apply forces in the right way, those movement skills transfer for me to batting, to fielding, which is obviously just running, but also throwing as well. The positions you want to get in and the concepts, they all start to flow into different areas. So I think it's a real solid base from which to work from. Start running, accelerating and decelerating well, and things transfer really nicely. So that's been a big area for me. And finally, this is more of I guess I was surrounded by Liam Kilduff early on when I was studying, and he's done a lot with Blair Cruther and Christian Cook, and the hormonal, behavioural side of sport and even just human behaviour in general it just fascinates me, and how hormones interact and how we can manipulate them, and the effects they have on us. So, I mean, specifically in terms of sports science, we look at priming, as I'm sure most sports have done already. So we have a T20 game in the evening, which usually kicks off about 6 p.m. So we have a lovely opportunity to do a priming session for guys and hopefully manipulate the hormones in a beneficial way that has an impact on performance later on. Excuse me. And we aren't measuring those hormones. Can't give them a testosterone number or whatever. But worst case situation, they feel good. They've got an extra gym session in. They're switched on. They're warmer. Their temperature's gone up throughout the day, and we have a positive impact on their mind, their confidence going out to play. So, from the priming sports science point of view to the human behaviour side, and another really good book makes it really simple is Robert Sapolsky's Behaviour. Is a great read, and I think that's absolutely fascinating. And there's probably still so much scope for us to learn and implement going forward.
What would one of those primary sessions look like, Phil? And would it be different for a batter or a bowler?
So the way I've done it previously is offer up options. I think the more options you've got, the better. Options being 5 40-metre sprints with full recovery. You can do a lifting session, and I'll say to the guys, pick a lower strength, a lower explosive, and an upper strength, and we'll look at for my guys. I look at maybe 2 sets of that, but it's heavy, it's high intensity, and then for those who aren't necessarily wanting to sprint or lift weights, a bike session. Again, we can do short sprints on there, or one long 30 seconds all-out sprint. That's worked quite nicely previously prior to gym sessions. I think it was Blair Cruther who did a sprint session on a bike, 30-second all-out sprint session prior to the gym, and again, favourable hormonal status going forward and increases in strength compared to guys that didn't. And then I'll let them choose. So if I wouldn't say necessarily that bowlers have to do this or batters have to do that. Within it, I might get the batters doing an extra med ball rotation work, and the bowlers will do something a bit more trunk stiffness and med ball slam style work. So it'll be tiny tweaks, but I wouldn't necessarily pigeonhole them into something really specific as such.
Fantastic. So you've been involved with cricket for quite a while now, and obviously at the highest level. What would you say the 3 most valuable things you've learnt are?
I think whether you're involved in cricket or anything, or business or football or people, the most important thing is, and you've heard it before, is relationships. And if I can have a great program, I can have the best ideas, but if my guys, my athletes, the guys and girls I've worked with, they don't like you, it's game over. You're talking to a wall. So building those relationships and allowing that to come first really does make the difference. And my second point within that, I think another big learner for me that keeps cropping up is patience. So you might understand that, I've understood that relationships are really important, but you still go, I need to get that program out, and I need to get them to do this particular exercise and all this kind of stuff. But actually, if it takes a day or a week or a month or a few months to get these athletes to do what you really want, but it takes 6 months, that's fine. That is okay, because if you're going to work with them for 4, 5, 6, 7 years, you've got those years in the bank. But you need the patience is probably, alongside relationships, the biggest one, because it takes time to build relationships. Some people open up straight away. I've had guys who didn't talk to me, worked with me. I worked with them, but almost didn't talk to me for the first few months. But now, I luckily allowed, and I didn't push too much, didn't push them out of their comfort zone in terms of building a relationship too much. I've now got a relationship where we're doing some exciting stuff. So relationships and patience, big one, particularly for me. And then the third one, I think, is I've put down find good mentors, find good or a good mentor or a few good mentors. I know I've kind of gone into your next question because I've got it written down here. But I think that's the big one, is not everything's in a book. You try to find guys or girls with so much more experience than you, and learn from them, ask questions, pick your brains, and get good role models as well. Not just clever people, but find people who are good with people, and ask how they do it, and watch and observe. And that's been a big one for me. I believe I've been lucky with who I've been surrounded by, and I think that's a real big learner.
So, as you correctly alluded to, that is the next question. So that's a really nice transition. So who would you say those people are for you?
I think I've close to mentioned them all already, but Professor Liam Kilduff at Swansea University, he makes you work so hard. So the research masters I did with him, you are worked to the bone, but he pushes you so hard in the right direction, and his knowledge is just ridiculous. If he does turn up to conferences and present a fair amount, and he's very modest. He won't shout about himself. He goes very unnoticed with a lot of work he does. But if you can grab him, he loves coffee. I would highly recommend 10, 20 minutes with him if you can get it. He's been a big impact on me and a big learner, made me work harder than you can work. So I'm pleased to say that I've done some work with him. My initial starting role in S&C as such with Matt Church, who is based down in Surrey, brilliant with people. Probably doesn't realise how good his knowledge is as well, but his interactions with people and how he can influence in a positive way is just, it's brilliant to watch. He can get anyone to do anything because they want to do it for him. He's been a big impact on me and someone I speak to regularly. And my current strength and conditioning national lead for the ECB is Rob Arman. He's been around in the game for a long time and applies, for me, the thing with him is he applies the evidence-based and research so well with his own common sense and experience. It's a really nice blend. It fits really well, and I think it's a really it's evidence-based, common sense approach. It's a really nice way to go, and he's again been a massive help to me and well worth a coffee.
So, next question: what if there was something you needed to find out about, and you weren't quite sure, or you needed a little bit more detail on it? What would you say your top resources are for information at the moment?
In reverse order, I'd go. I've recently got onto ResearchGate, and I know from our previous attempt we discussed whether you. I still don't know the answer to this. I don't know whether you have to be a published researcher to get on it, or to be recommended by someone on it. But ResearchGate is where the authors of all the journals, at least, are on this. What is it? Almost a social network. And if the journal article isn't available online, you can message them and they will send it to you. So I've been able to get access more recently to journals that once you're out of university, you don't have access to free journals, and £30-40 a pop. If it's not free, it's ridiculous. So that ResearchGate's been a big one for me to pop onto, and if I can't find the journal, I'll message the author. Podcasts, I think it's just a generally brilliant way of filling your time when you're in the car, on the tube, in the train, on a plane. Access to so many good speakers and people you wouldn't be able to kind of meet and pop by and have a discussion with. You're getting someone to do that for you. I mean, it's free. It's unbelievable. I think it's ridiculous that these podcasts happen, and there's sometimes some of these top speakers are repeated so many times, but I don't think there's enough times you can hear them anyway. So yeah, the podcasts I think are brilliant. And again, number one is people. Find those people that you need, that you trust and you believe in, and have more knowledge than you anyway, and they'll generally point you in the right direction. So they're the three go-tos definitely that I work with.
Simple but effective, eh?
Yes, absolutely.
Brilliant. So this is probably going to have a few subcategories to it, Phil, this next question, but what would you say your top three kind of sports performance exercises or drills are that you use mostly in your current day-to-day practice?
Obviously, this could go anywhere. So if you put a fast bowler in front of me and said, fundamentally, if they had to do three things, what would keep them on the park and in pretty good shape?
Sure.
I think that's how I have to probably go with it.
Yeah, no worries.
First one, which I think would apply to anyone, anywhere, if you just want to get better at anything, is sprint. I put brackets. I put on my little sheet here, brackets with good technique. So nail down that technique and then add your velocity. You've got to be able to run. The more efficient you are, the more robust you become at sprinting, the faster you become. There's just so many performance benefits. It's high, it's fast, stretch shortening, impact. It covers so many areas of performance and within one exercise, coordination, you name it, it's in there. So I just sprint. That's my first one. Second one is for a fast bowler, particularly I've put step up, so a barbell step up. You can go with your, in terms of reps and sets, you can go from, super heavy to, 3 to 6 is probably your rep range you're probably working in. Whack the weight on, make a nice foot climb, sound from above when you step on that box. Don't just slide on and make it sloppy. Up, make the sound, make some impact, get up nice and tall. You can vary that with, depending on what phase, what you're doing. You can chuck some hanging bands on both sides, on one side. So there's variations within that, which I quite like as well. And then pull-ups as your upper body exercise. I mean, it's, again, if you can bash out, a 20 kilo plus body weight pull-up and beyond, then you're probably in quite a good place upper body wise. So if you're forcing me to pick 3, then I'm probably merging towards those 3.
Fantastic.
Particularly in sprint.
Fantastic. And would you say that there was any specific relationship or preference from bowlers and batters with any of those 3 exercises that they would choose to do?
I think everyone's now, with the education that's come with along with hamstrings and the amount of sprinting that our players do in general, I think everyone's very comfortable with the idea of, right, you've got to sprint at least once a week. So we've recently, the last couple of years, built up a nice profile of with the GPS, with the catapult that we've been given for the players across one day and tests. So we now know, I can feed back to the guys that if you're going to field on the boundary within a 1 day match, you can go up to 300 meters over 25 k's an hour. We've had guys hit top speeds of 35 k's an hour. We've got 3 or 4 of them that will go between probably around 34 k's and over. So we can show them that now, and they understand that if they're not prepared to do that, you're going to break. It's too fast to cope with if you've not prepared that. So that's an easy one to get across to everyone, especially with the information. And then within say a step up, and some guys like to squat particularly. Some guys, probably the more the bowlers are on average, have a tendency not to want to load their back too much.
Yeah.
And if someone comes to me, if an athlete comes to me and says, I just don't like squatting, or I don't want to load my back, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. I think there's hundreds of different ways you can get around that. And if you want to still have that bar on the back, but you don't particularly want to have 150 kilos, with a squat, then a step up is a brilliant variation. It's single leg, it covers everything. It can still be explosive. You can stick a gym wear on for a velocity feedback. It's, there's a lot you can do with it. So the bowlers probably definitely go more towards a step up. We still have batters are probably on average keener to squat, and where we can, we'll still clean, snatch, jump squats, and use medicine balls. So there's definitely a range of thought process behind the player. And pull-ups, that's just universal. Everyone can do a pull-up, and there's not many excuses for why you can't do a pull-up. So they generally crack on with that.
Would you say that they help prevent any shoulder, elbow, wrist injuries at all, or they're just a good vertical pull exercise to chuck in?
Yeah, it's just a good vertical pull exercise to chuck in. Obviously, it's a pull. So our test that we do within between the physio and myself, we will look at a push-pull and a push-pull ratio. So we'll use a press-up and a supine row with a bent knee. And if that ratio gets outside of a 1.2, then we know that the guys will be more exposed to shoulder issues either currently or very soon if they start upping their volume too much. In terms of the guys that are in a happy place with that ratio, with a push-pull, the guys that generally have no shoulder issues are in a happy place with that ratio, but also can do a pretty decent heavy pull-up as well. So it's probably a combo of a couple of tests or exercises, however you want to put it.
Cool.
But yeah, that's how it fits into our thought process.
That's fantastic. No, that's really insightful. Thanks for sharing that. Kind of semi-related to what we've just discussed. How do you approach monitoring players, and particularly monitoring workloads?
So I think the basic as such and the easiest that we can do is use session RPE. So that is your rate of perceived exertion, and we use a 10-point scale, which has been the same for years, and we times that by the duration, the minutes of exercise, and that gives us, I guess, a global load. And it's the reason I mentioned that first is that's your basic. You can do that yourself at home on a calculator every day, creating a little spreadsheet, whatever you want to do, and it's free. And it's also as long as your athlete is reporting honestly. And I don't, if that's down to you to read your athlete and have an honest conversation, then I think it's a brilliant way to understand where they're at, and you can still apply your acute chronic workload ratios within that. So we use that particularly, when guys go off to the IPL and they're away for 4 or 5 weeks, and we don't have a GPS on them, for example, and we want to stay in contact and know where they're at. It's very simple. They can bang it in their phone, and we receive it every day. In we go. Any spikes, any lulls, it can highlight to us that we need a conversation and maybe make a couple of plans going forward. So you can apply that anywhere. So that's probably my go-to number one. The more expensive option is that we use is our GPS. So we've had Catapult for a couple of years, and we particularly use it for fast bowlers. I think the women do it as a blanket. We don't. We do it with our fast bowlers particularly, and within that, we're very lucky. We know exactly how many balls they've bowled, and then obviously you've got all your sprint meters, your total distance covered, your load, and we've got some metrics within the bowling that we look at as well. So that's obviously a bit more time consuming and expensive, but it works very well. And when you combine them together, especially when we have rehabs, guys will GPS and then we can build them back up. So an example of that would be we had a rehab a couple of years ago, and we know that he's hitting all the sprint numbers and everything like that in a non-fatigue state. So he's gone really well. So what we wanted to do is make sure that before he came back to play, he was able to hit his markers, bowling and on-field fielding and sprint markers in a fatigue state. So knowing what he does on the field, we try to replicate that without playing cricket. So we sent him to play golf for 4 hours, full 18 holes, no buggy. The reason I know he had no buggy is because I drove it to make sure he didn't get in the buggy. You've got to cover all bases here. And then we actually did all his training post 4 hours. So, after the equivalent of tea time in a cricket game. So once he'd gone through that, we had a very strong marker of return to play for the coach to say, yeah, he's actually in a robust enough state now to return to the cricket field. So there's obviously various ways you can use it, and both your session RP and your GPS.
Fantastic. Do you ever, or have you ever used golf as a recovery tool?
Well, pretty much every day, yeah. As soon as the guys aren't playing cricket, they're on the golf course. So we don't necessarily have to prescribe that or worry about that, sure, because it takes care of this of itself, really. I think it's brilliant, really. It's active recovery, and we, like I said, we use it in our rehabs. So they do that for us. We don't have to worry too much.
Fantastic. So just before I come on to ask you a little bit more about recovery, could you just give us an insight into kind of what numbers they might be hitting with the GPSs on them?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of test match, in terms of the Red Bull stuff, worst case scenario, the biggest numbers we've seen was we had 2 of our fast bowlers cover in a game which actually lasted just over 4 days, 55 kilometres. So when you break down, when you translate that to layman's term, obviously they're not running the whole time. There's an element of walking with that. They've got a lot of distance covered at high speeds or over 20 k's an hour because they're bowling a lot. But to do that, the equivalent of how I try to explain it to to friends or family is take your dog for a walk for 6 hours in a day, and every 3 minutes you have to do a 20-meter sprint. That's what they're doing on the field in a full day's play as a fast bowler, which is phenomenal. And then potentially they have to then get up the next morning, and if they haven't bowled the team out, then they have to continue it on until 1 o'clock the next day. Then they get their rest, and then if the team doesn't bat very well, then they're back out again on day 3, doing potentially the same thing, up to 55 kilometres, which is 36 miles, 37 miles.
Marathon and a half, roughly.
Yeah, and then if you add in the 2 days training prior to the game, in total they might cover another 10k. So you're looking at maybe 65 kilometres a week, worst case scenario. And then if we've got a 5 test match series in 6 weeks, they're doing, well, what is it, a marathon and a half a week for 6 weeks. So that's been something that has been really eye-opening for myself. And, I always thought they did a lot, but when you actually see those numbers, it's crazy. They don't always hit those numbers. Usually it's around 40 Ks. Can be between 30 and 40 Ks. Obviously, we're in Sri Lanka recently. The fast bowlers don't bowl a lot. It's a lot of spinners. So from place to place, it varies. But that also allows me to tailor their training. And when we go to Australia, for example, pitches are massive. And the ball doesn't necessarily, like in South Africa, fly off to the boundary. They have to do a lot of running. So I can say, as I have said to them, there's going to be a lot more running in this tour. Let's get that sorted. Whereas South Africa is a lot more acceleration work, because the ball flies off, particularly in the one-day games, flies off to the boundary. Guys do a hell of a lot more accelerations, but less top-end sprinting, because the ball's already gone past them because of the altitude and different types of pitches. So it's fascinating what the kind of feedback it gives you, but also it allows you a real conversation with the player about what you need to do with your training. And then hopefully the public start to understand that cricket isn't just standing around. It's standing around with a lot of running over a lot of distance. So hopefully it opens people's eyes.
It's very, very interesting, and I wasn't quite aware the distances were that high. So that's fascinating to hear. So obviously that will incur a lot of fatigue in players. So how would you approach recovery strategies?
So in a bit of an insight, I guess, in game, and I'm sure a lot of counties do this as well. For example, if we have a day in the field on day 1, and then day 2 we know we're batting, so we've started batting on the last couple of overs on day 1, we will. I'm a big advocate of it. Sleep. We'll say to the fast bowlers, and we'll sign it off with the management, that the fast bowlers don't need to come in until the start of play at 11 o'clock the next morning, because why do they need to? Why do they need to get up early to come in? While the batsmen are out batting, we've got this wonderful weird game where the game's happening, and actually half the team could be warming up and the other half could be sleeping at the back of the hotel, because they don't need to be at the ground. So first one is sleep well, and the more sleep we can give the guys, the better, and the more times, particularly as fast bowlers, we can give off feet and away from the game, and napping and time in the morning, then we'll push for that. I guess nutritionally, we try to get as much of the right stuff down them as possible. The grounds, the county grounds and the test match grounds particularly, are producing very good food these days, which is very pleasing. So the guys eat well. And then we're very lucky, I guess, with the hotels that we're at. There's always a swimming pool and a gym available. So guys might prefer an active recovery in the gym through mobility, through some yoga, which has become very popular in the last few years. Or we'll push the guys to just get in the pool and be in the pool for 20, 30 minutes and move. There's always a massage available as well. It's funny, some people just can't stand massages. Yeah, some people absolutely love them, but there's a paper out by Christian Cook, I think it was 2013, and they found that all these different recovery strategies, it purely came down to choice by the athlete. So if they're not happy doing so, ice baths, let's say they work, right? an athlete that doesn't want to do it, they're going to be unhappy. Suddenly you've got a stressed out athlete who doesn't want to do it. It's not going to work. So the athlete has to be given choice, and that's what we do is whether it's leg recovery, pump, swimming pool, massage, eat and sleep well that night, hopefully every night, but eat and sleep well that night. As long as they're happy, then I'm happy, and then we've suddenly got a better environment for them physiologically and also emotionally.
Fantastic. I think I completely agree with you, because obviously the athlete has to be happy and comfortable, and if they're distressed in any way or resistant, then their body's not going to adapt to recover as well as it would be if they weren't. So that makes lots of sense. So last question, really, Phil. What would you say your top pieces of advice are really in life, exercise, sport, and or cricket, really, if you had to give some advice to the younger you starting out in your career, or potentially an undergraduate student looking to follow similar footsteps?
Be open to challenge and listen to your athletes. They're the ones who are doing it and who are feeling it, and also have probably sometimes more experience than you. I mean, look at Jimmy Anderson. He's got 15, 16 years of international experience. The bloke's been through every sports science concept and fad. Like he probably has a decent idea of what works and what doesn't. And actually listen to the athlete as soon as you can, and actually ask them questions. And I think when I stumbled across it or cottoned on to asking the athlete and engaging them sooner, you get so much more out of them. And also, I think I'm very lucky at the moment. I've got a good bunch of athletes to work with, but particularly one or two guys, or probably even more, a very challenging bunch in terms of if I'm proposing something, it has to be watertight. And that's okay. It's okay that the athletes are challenging you. And I actually now, at first, to be honest, it was a bit of a shock, but encourage them to say, look, what are your thoughts before I push this ahead? Have you got any ideas? Where's your head at with this? And allow them to challenge you. I think the athletes are a massive source of information that we can tap into, as well as the professors and lecturers and the older coaches. So that would be the one, I think. Speak to your athletes as soon as possible and listen and really get into a conversation with them.
Just before we kind of finish up, if people wanted to get in touch with you and possibly ask some follow-up questions, what would be the best way of doing that?
So I am on Twitter. I'm not particularly active. I don't overly remember the last time I tweeted, but I am on it, and I do see it. So, and I use it as a bit of a scroll through and see what everyone's up to. So by all means, contact me on there. I am at PCF Scott. So open to a coffee or a chat or a phone call or whatever anyone wants. I'm more than happy for that.
I'll put that along with all the other links we've mentioned in the show notes so people can access them directly. But I just wanted to finish by saying thanks again for coming on a second time. And
anything for you, Ryan.
I really appreciate it. What have you got coming up at the start of next year?
Next year's a big year. We have a test and a one-day tour to the West Indies, which is a rather nice location to be going to for a few weeks. Then some of the guys will go off to the IPL, and then we have the World Cup, and immediately followed by the Ashes in the summer of 2019. So massive year for English cricket, really, for both red ball and white ball, which can be very exciting.
Well, best of luck. Hope it all goes well, and
thank you.
Happy New Year.
And to you, yes. Happy New Year.
If you can stay on the line, and I'll stop recording. But thanks very much for your time, Phil, and I'll speak to you soon.
No worries at all. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for listening to the 12th episode. We hope you enjoyed the show. Please don't hesitate to leave us a rating or review on your listening platform of choice. If you haven't already, please check out our website. We have weekly blogs on our blog page. You can sign up to our monthly newsletter via our sign up page. Our online store consists of personal coach, training programs, nutrition plans, interactive training systems, toolbox, and coming very soon, membership packages. We also have several social media platforms: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Links to all these can be found at the bottom of every page on our website or via any search engine. That's all for now. Until next time, take care.